Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Coffee and a Book. My name is William Hemsworth, and thank you very much for joining me for this week's episode. I'm excited to have my guest. She's the author of a great new book titled Reclaimed: Overcome Trauma and Gain Healthy Control of Your Life. Shannon McGraw. Shannon, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. It's a gorgeous day. How are you doing?
I'm great. It's a beautiful day here in Tucson as well. The high is like 80 degrees. Perfect.
Nice. Can't beat that.
Absolutely not. Now, your book, it's very moving. So what made you decide to write this book, and why is now the right time?
I actually started writing this about 5 years ago. And because I knew that it was time for me to put together the process that I go through and going through the various traumas that I've gone and suffered through, but also that I've helped others through Hopeful Hearts Ministry. So this is the exact, outline basically that I feel like or directive that I've been given from God in his word with Ephesians 5:6-20. And so when we were all in lockdown, because of the pandemic, I literally thought, well, I have the time. I picked it back up, looked at it. I had been through a divorce since then. So I knew it was time for me to, reevaluate. I had been through much therapy and again, through the process that I feel that this is. And I knew that there were others that I could help if I just got this word out.
Okay. Now, the subtitle of your book, Reclaimed, is Overcome Trauma and Gain Healthy Control of Your Life. What started that journey for you, gaining control?
Well, I'm a survivor of abuse, incest, and rape, and then, and other kind of emotional abuse. My father was an alcoholic in the home, and there's when you go through various traumas, even if it's just an illness or that kind of thing that disrupts your world, it can make you very angry. It causes you to react and respond a certain way. And I knew that in being an abuse survivor, one of the biggest things is you feel out of control because somebody has demolished those boundaries. They've taken away your sense of being able to say no and to feel like I have a right to say no. So we all want to have this control, even if you haven't been through that type of trauma. I think we all, as humans, want to have some type of control. And so I had a point in my life when I was in my late 20s. It's about 20 years ago, which is horrible to think that it's been that long now. But that I was raising my young kids. I had a 2.5 and a 1-month-old. And when you're raising toddlers, it's hard to realize, I'm not in control here and I have to figure out what's going on or who it is that I need to focus on. And that's God. For me, that was God. And he came into my life at a time where I was just very angry. I didn't like who I was. My life was out of control and I didn't know what else to do. And honestly, there was this one fateful moment where my 2.5-year-old was just trying to potty train. And I was in the process of feeding his 1-month-old little brother. And he decided, well, this is pretty. And I'm going to paint with, what just happened. And, and I'm like, I was by myself. And I remember going into that bathroom and seeing the mess everywhere. And for some reason, it just triggered me. And I got so angry and I wanted to shove my son's underwear in his face like he was a dog, which is, every time I tell the story, every time I think it's a horrible thing to admit to. And I sat there, and when I went to go do it, it was like truly, I didn't really know God at this moment. I hadn't had that kind of, I'd been to church, I had done all of those things, but I really wasn't there. And in that moment, my little boy was looking at me and something just stopped me. And I thought, who am I? Like, what is happening? And I just remember crying out and just saying, Jesus, help me. And after cleaning him up, after making sure my 1-month-old was fed and cleaned up, that's when I went on the floor and cried out to God and said, I don't want to be this person. I don't want to live this life. I don't want to live this life. If you have something for my life, then do something with it. And that is when I truly know that he came into my life, and that I felt him, and that I knew him, and that I knew that in order to have that control, I needed to seek him and to look to him to have that control. And that's how it started for me.
Absolutely. I think the hardest thing about doing that is, well, I guess let me ask you this. Why is it so hard to acknowledge that we're not in control, or we have to let it go?
Because we're human, right? I mean, even though this, like I said, that was 20 years ago. I mean, this is a journey. I've had many moments where I'm like, I take that control back. And even though God is walking with me every day, as humans, we tend to think, no, I've got this, I can do this, or maybe God's taking too long, or, why in the world would he allow this to happen to me? There's all kinds of, things that it's so hard to give that trust over to somebody else, let alone God, who, we can't necessarily see. But when we do, when we work on that, and that's kind of what I go through in the book, is this very step-by-step elementary process of just getting to a place of knowing him and trying to find that trust so that we can, have that ultimate control. But I think honestly, the answer to your question is because we're human, and we want to feel like that we're in control of something.
No, I definitely relate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, through reading your book, I was drawn to the dedication page, and I know that sounds really strange, but in there you wrote, we're not victims, we're not survivors, we are thrivers. So what do you mean by that, and why is that important to realize?
It's so important, especially as those that have gone through some major trauma or just traumatic experiences in their life. There's the three-part kind of act, way of how we are. You can be a victim of the circumstance.
Yeah.
Whenever whatever happens to you, whether it be abuse, whether it be sickness, illness, betrayal, you're victimized by that. No doubt, we are. We have that moment, and we can stay in that moment to where we're stuck, and it's, oh, my life is horrible, and it's because of this, or it's because of you, or it's because of that situation. Or you can, and we have, you have a good few days or however long that you could be there, but at some point, in order to really live, you need to move forward. And then the next step is surviving. You have survived it. You've maybe gone to therapy, you work through it. And then this is where sometimes people get stuck, and they think, oh, I'm good, I'm going to push that aside. Mm-hmm. It's not bothering me anymore. I don't want to deal with it anymore. And that's okay. Sometimes, especially, I work with a lot of sexual abuse survivors, and there are times that we need to walk away from it for a while and be able to just live a normal life, a quote unquote normal life. Sure. But then as you keep going, you realize that's still triggering me, or I have triggers and I don't even, what's happening. I'm smelling something and I'm having this feeling, and I'm getting mad and angry, or somebody touched me a certain way, or somebody said something. And then it causes you to respond. Or when you're growing, you're bringing up your kids, and you realize that in the way that you're dealing with them, you don't know why you're reacting to them a certain way. Those are all the things that the reason why you have to keep working on your healing journey. So thriving is when you keep going, and when you say, I'm going to take control of my life, to recognize that I'm worth this process, even though it's painful to get through it, because sometimes that pain is what causes people to stop. But when you can work through that pain and realize that God gave you that courage, God gave you that strength, that you actually have the gifts and the talents needed to move forward and beyond. Thriving is living in that. Thriving is living in the life that God intended you to have and to be.
Okay. Now, in your book, you have a lot of scripture passages in the book, and you talk about a lot about Ephesians chapter 5. Why is the book of Ephesians so important to you?
I love this. I mean, book of Ephesians is wonderful, first of all, but this particular chapter, I came back from a speaking engagement in Sydney, Australia, of all places. And I kept hearing, when I was over there, there was a lot of scandal going on within the Catholic Church in regards to, the priest abuse. And it just troubled me. It just troubled me in regards to all of us that have been abused and maybe didn't get the help we needed or weren't able to speak out. And I really wanted to be able to do something about that. And I remember being able to not sleep, and I kept hearing, "Awake, O sleeper, arise from the dead, and Christ will give you light." And it just over and over and over my head to where I had to wake up and write it down. That next morning when I woke up and literally opened my Bible, I didn't know where to find it. I didn't know it was Ephesians 5:14. I went and opened up the Bible, and there it was right there. And so I started reading before and after, and that's what it really hit me, because before that passage, it goes on to say, and I probably won't be able to quote it, I can get into my book, but don't partake in empty arguments, for the wrath of God is coming upon those that are disobedient. So, don't let yourself be taken up by those that have done these things to you, or what trauma has caused all these lies saying you're not good enough, you're not smart enough. And then it says, rather part of fruitless works of darkness, rather expose them. For once they are exposed, God will give you light. It was mainly circumstance was, you didn't ask for this to happen to you. That is between them and God. That was a decision that they made. God was there with you, protecting your ability to love. Unfortunately, that was their free will choice. And we could probably go on and on about all that. But the biggest thing to me is God saying, don't stay in that darkness with them. This is not meant to be yours. Expose it, get it out, know your truth, live as children of light, as he says in these passages. And that's what I go into the book is, how do we do that? How do we get out that ugly? How do we expose all of that into the light and truly get back to who God created us to be?
Right. Now, self-confidence can be really low for someone who's gone through trauma. How can a survivor's self-confidence be restored when they're feeling so broken?
Oh, that is such a good question, because I definitely have lived through that. In many aspects, before I met God in the beginning in my late 20s, and then even after I was, called to speak because people wanted to hear my story, and I'm still a survivor or thriver of this abuse. So I still struggled with that thought of, well, I'm not as good as these other people that are speaking, or why would anybody want to listen to my story? Or why is it that I think that I, am good enough to be heard? I want, in answering your question, I first just want to speak to those that have these lies that they're struggling with, that they choke on. The fact that, I don't have a right, or, do I have that ability to say yes or no to somebody? Am I ever able to love myself? Because if I do this for myself, then it's considered selfish, or it's considered, not good. And I just want you to know that that's not from God, So in order to really get a hold of that confidence, it's about going through this process that I'm offering in the book, and recognizing what your truth is, as simple as it is. Lies, mine might not be yours might be something different. And then you turn around and I have you write out, what are your simple facts? If you're a parent, you have whatever, how many beautiful kids, you've graduated from high school, you've graduated from college, whatever it may be, but the simple facts that you are a good person, you have done good things. And let's focus on that and not focus on these lies that have kept you in the dark for so long. And you start building up your confidence as you start learning how to love yourself.
Okay. Now, in chapter 7, at the end of it, you talk about how God can bring greater good from every situation. How can that understanding be helpful for those that have experienced trauma?
Mm. It's so hard when they're in the midst of it. I do understand this. And I remember one time speaking a while back and making the comment that I'm grateful for everything that I've been through, even all the abuse at such a young age. And the reason why is because I have allowed God to use that in me to create who I am today, to allow me to be this author and to be the founder of Hopeful Hearts and to help others and to bring them forward, to be that voice, and to share the deep details of my ugly, where maybe not everybody else wants to share theirs, but that they can at least know that they're not alone. I think that's probably the most important aspect of this, is knowing that God will always bring a greater good. God is of peace and love. And when there's anxiety and anger and frustration or any of the ugly, that is not of God. And so in all of these circumstances, even if it's something that maybe isn't as, like abuse, I go back to illness because I'm a cancer survivor, actually still kind of going through it right now. And I know what that can feel like. How can God bring good from this when I feel like my life is over, or I feel stuck within this illness? But it's how we choose to say, how am I going to react in this? How am I going to respond? And what kind of example am I going to be around to those around me? Not just your kids, not just your spouse, but what about the nurses? What about the doctors? What about, everybody else? We have that choice to decide, am I going to be angry? Am I going to be bitter? Am I going to be frustrated? Or am I going to say, okay, Lord, you're bringing me to this. I know you're going to bring me through this. He will always bring a greater good to the other side.
All right. Amen. Always. So keep that hope, everyone. It will happen. What has been the feedback that you've received from the book so far?
It's been a beautiful thing, for me, because all of these books, they always go back into helping survivors. And so I've probably, I did a book study, and I did it online. I did a Zoom book study, and it could be possible, if I can finally get moved into my house, that I would do another one and get settled. And because what the beautiful thing is to hear everybody come back and say, you have finally allowed me to realize that it's okay to say, what do I want? That's something I talk about in the book, is just getting to a place where you love yourself enough to say, what do I want? And then how do I get there? And I actually have a right to get there and to do that. And to see that freedom in their faces, just on the group that I had on the Zoom call, has been amazing. And and hear people say, this has really helped me overcome something that I was stuck on. I had one other person say that she was truly using it, with her therapist. I walked through it with one client back actually before it was officially published. And she went from being very much like, I know I'm going to die. I know I'm sick. Like that was her kind of issue. She had already gone through an illness, and she just couldn't get past the fact that maybe she would get another one, or that she would have to go through all that again. In the end, she was then attending her church's like a prayer group, a Bible study. She had found this support system. She had recognized so much about herself and her own strength by the end of the book that she was like, I couldn't go back to who I was before, that's my purpose. That's the point.
Now, let's talk about your ministry for a second. You have a 501c3 Hopeful Hearts Ministry. Can you tell us a little about your ministry and what you do?
Absolutely. So we're 9.5 years in. We'll celebrate 10 years January of 2022.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We're fully donor funded, 501c3. We aid in the long-term recovery of survivors of abuse. Another little tagline we do is we give a voice to survivors of abuse. So we work with women and men mainly in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and even on up. I have worked with younger, but I just don't work with children. And for that being that they're just not ready yet to truly overcome. I'm trying to help people work through and go on this healing journey and come out of it. Now, a big aspect of what we do is education like this to try to help prevent child abuse, or try to help, maybe the next generation recognize what that is so that it could be stopped or talked about. So that is an aspect of what we do with Hopeful Hearts Ministry. We also help other programs. We do one-on-one peer support. That's a big aspect of what we do. We do empowerment programs that we have online or on our Facebook with Hopeful Hearts Ministry. But we help other programs as well. We're actually in the process on our website of updating our resources to include all of those other wonderful programs across the United States that also help survivors of abuse that might have different, whether it be human trafficking or, domestic violence, whatever it is that their specific niche is. We want to put them out there, but we offer maybe, online classes for them or support for their groups that come to them as well.
Okay. Shannon, where can our listeners pick up your book?
Well, right now it's just on Amazon, so you can find it on Amazon on in paperback, or even in Kindle. So just find it under Shannon McGraw, Reclaimed. And then I have my other two books. They're under Shannon Deitz, I will say, but it's Exposed and Redeemed. But I have an author page if you want to go to that.
Great. Now, Shannon, do you have any words of wisdom for those out there before I let you go that maybe they hear this and they're wondering what to do next?
Mm-hmm. First and foremost, I am so sorry for anything that you may have gone through. I mean, maybe some of you are watching or listening that you're in something heavy right now, or you've had memories come back from something that happened 30 years ago and you don't know how to rectify it. You don't know what to do with that. And so I would just want you to know that you're not alone, that you're not crazy. I know that thought went through my mind. Maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe I'm making this up. I shouldn't be dealing, I don't have time to deal with this, but you do have time. Please know this, because you are worth it. You are worthy. And for you to be able to be the best version of yourself, and to be that best mom or that best dad, and to support your spouse and to support your kids and your friends and your family, you have to care for yourself first. You are worth it. And that's kind of what I want to leave you with, is you're worth taking the time to go through this process, and know it will not be easy, because it will bring up pain and frustration, but you will work through that to the other side, to where God brings a greater good from it all. Great.
Well, Shannon, thank you for taking some time to join me on the program today. I really appreciate it. Congratulations on the book.
Thanks.
And I look forward to hearing more great things about it. Thanks for joining.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm grateful for this opportunity. Thank you.